an election about masks, and no dumbest bill in America. But this podcast is called Really? An Election About Masks. This is Mark Fisher with Mark the Millennials and the Millennial joining me today. This is historic, ladies and gentlemen, because we've been in search for quite some time for a millennial who's also a young woman, and that is Melissa Brown. Welcome.
Happy to be here, Mark.
Glad you're here. And of course, Christopher Hopkins, our assistant producer, and Adam Coutura, our producer. So this podcast is called Really? An Election About Masks. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, podcast listeners, this election, as far as the Democrat Party is concerned, and as far as Democrats are concerned, is really about the coronavirus and masks. And the fact that apparently President Trump, according to them, and Republicans, according to Democrats, don't care about people's health and therefore aren't wearing masks, including when they're outside, by the way, which I think is absurd. But that's what the Democrat Party actually thinks, and they are literally doubling down, and they have from the very beginning of this presidential campaign with Joe Biden as their nominee, all the way to the present day, this late stage in the game. I mean, we are days away from the election, days away. And they're still doubling down on the fact that President Trump and the Republican Party as a whole don't care about the health of the people because they don't wear masks 100% of the time, no matter where they are. These folks are the biggest hypocrites, and they're trying to play this scare game, right? Because that's the Democrat thing. Republicans want to push Granny off the cliff and take away her Social Security. Those were the old arguments that Democrats used to make years ago in presidential campaigns. And now the new one is, during the pandemic, Republicans want to push Granny over the cliff because they're not wearing masks, and therefore they're going to give Granny and everybody else the coronavirus.
So much fear-mongering.
It's exactly, it's fear-mongering. So we have, podcast listeners, a series of amazing clips that are going to lead you up to the present day, where even in the present day, you've got days away from the election, you've got Joe Biden still playing the super spreader. You know, the Republicans are super spreaders. They've got diseases. You know, it's just absurd, and it's really sad that with all of the things going on in the world, that the only thing that they're focusing on is this. Obviously, podcast listeners, and Melissa and I agree that this is a really, really important issue. The pandemic's an important issue. Solving this crisis is very important, but we can't stop living our lives.
Exactly.
Right? We can't stop living our lives. And by stop living our lives, we can't shelter in place and say, oh no, I must fear going outside. I can't go outside. I can't go to the grocery store. I can't go anywhere because, you know, the Democrats say that I have to stay inside and you know, like in my little cocoon and do exactly what they say. That's not the way human beings are wired. We're not wired to be sheltered in place. We are wired to engage and interact with one another, to work and to try to improve our lives and to try to improve our lives for our families as well. So we have the first of a number of clips, and then Melissa and I are going to discuss this. Going to give you lots of chance to talk about this because believe me, I'm really curious about what millennials think about this in particular. This being the whole masks thing, an election about masks. So here's Angela Mitchell of NBC News, otherwise known as Angela Mitchell. Angela, she's very nasally. On August 13th, Angela Mitchell basically talked about this whole face mask thing and mischaracterized. She said that Biden is not playing the game on face mask and basically blaming Donald Trump. And so you can see how the media was completely and utterly coordinating with the Democrat Party as early as August about this pandemic, realizing, you know what, this is going to be the issue that we're going to beat him on because Republicans really don't care about your health or your health care because now they're doubling down on that too.
Oh, yeah.
So here's the first of a number of clips. We're going to work up to them. Here it is.
Federal government to order masks. The president also mischaracterized Biden's positions on shutting down to stop the pandemic.
He wants to shut down our economy, close our schools, and grind society to a halt.
So that's Angela Mitchell saying the president in August mischaracterized Biden's position. Biden, according to Angela Mitchell, never said that he wanted to shut down the economy. So here's the thing. here's the thing. What does Biden want to do? Because he's saying that Trump mishandled the pandemic. So therefore, the only other thing that you could do is continue to utterly and completely shut down the economy and say to everybody, shelter in place, don't leave your house. You can only order stuff online and have it delivered to your house. You can't go to work. I mean, that's really, in my opinion, the only other option.
Exactly.
And so what do you think? I mean, go ahead.
I think the U.S. nationwide can't afford another shutdown. So many small businesses have been hurt. Students are falling behind. Some kids, probably in every state, don't have access to broadband or internet access. They need to be in school. They need to be interacting with students. They need to play sports, not just for social and physical activity, but for some it could be a scholarship or a ticket to a better life.
Absolutely. I mean, it makes perfect sense. And look, this podcast, it's hard to believe we have to do a podcast on this, right? But we have to, because the Democrats are basically saying that the entire Democrat Party, Republicans, because they don't wear masks, which, by the way, isn't true. Republicans wear masks when they go inside and go inside of public places, right? Or private businesses, they wear masks, right? When they're home, they can choose to do whatever they want. And also when they're outside, I think you should not be wearing a mask outside. Exactly. I think that is utterly absurd unless you are someone who is really prone to potentially dying from coronavirus, which means you have lots of comorbidities, you are of a certain age, in which case maybe you shouldn't be outside to begin with. I'm just saying, other than in your backyard. But those are the details that Democrat Party just doesn't want to talk about, so they just play the fear game. So here we have, in the very first debate, because we're going to work up to this, podcast listeners, in the very first debate, we've got Biden saying that Trump didn't do enough to save lives. Of course, once again, it's all about fear, right? You're going to die if President Trump gets reelected. And here's the next clip, and here it is.
Did nothing. He waited and waited and waited. He still doesn't have a plan.
Well,
I laid out back in
it's 2
March
minutes.
exactly what we should be doing. And I laid out again in July what we should be doing. We should be providing all the protective gear possible. We should be providing the money the House has passed in order to be able to go out and get people the help they need to keep their businesses open schools that cost a lot of money. You should get out of your bunker and get out of the sand trap and get in your golf course and go in the Oval Office and bring together the Democrats and Republicans and fund what needs to be done now to save lives.
So in order to save lives, at least in that clip, Biden said during the first debate with Chris Wallace, of course, who was incredibly crooked and unfair in that first debate, but Joe Biden said, well, there isn't enough protective equipment. There isn't enough so in other words, there aren't enough masks, which is why we put that clip up there. And the fact of the matter is that as of many months ago, there were plenty of masks, and there are plenty of masks, and many people are making their own masks.
Oh, yeah.
The real question is that no one wants to talk about is how effective are masks and which masks are more effective than other masks.
Yes. I've seen different studies. I know some people say the net gaiter masks are the least effective and do nothing. And
what's a net gaiter mask? Explain that.
I think it's one of those masks there where it's a circle and you wrap it around your face and it covers from your nose down instead of the standard mask where you fasten it behind your ears.
Oh, so then you just it goes around your neck and then
You look like a bandit.
You look like a bandit, exactly. It's like and do they work? Because those are kind of it's not really surgical grade mask type equipment. It's basically cloth.
From what I've read, those are not considered effective, although I have heard people say that cloth masks are a little more effective in that way, but the most effective is the N95 respirators that we, of course, reserve for the frontline workers and first responders.
Absolutely. And herein lies where the debate really should go, which is not whether or not everybody has personal protective equipment, because they do. Everybody has a mask now, everybody. The question is shouldn't we be debating the effectiveness of mask wearing, and more specifically, what masks actually work and what masks do not work so well. And I think it's pretty obvious from any reasonably intelligent person that a mask that is homemade with cloth probably doesn't really do anything. Whereas a surgical mask or an N95 mask or really high-end mask probably does something and probably does more and might be worth the cost of it, particularly if it can be reused, quite a few times and or cleaned or whatever the case may be. But that is not what Joe Biden does, just saying he should have done more on masks. Well, by the first debate, there were plenty of masks everywhere.
Yeah.
So why not have the debate on, okay, are masks actually working? And here's the problem. Social media won't even let you post about it. They will literally cover up the post and take it down if you say, hey, look, I have a mask and it's a cloth mask and I bought it from ABC Cloth Masks Incorporated. I made that up, by the way. And I'm just putting it out there. I don't think this mask really works. Does anyone have any data on this? Facebook and social media and Twitter, all of it, including YouTube, they would take that down.
Oh, yeah.
Because, now wait a minute, isn't the whole idea to be educated about whether it actually works, right?
Multiple opinions. That's science.
That's how we get to the truth, by having this really great, robust debate a number of different ways. And one major way in modern America is through social media. But yet we can't even have that conversation. And even at the presidential level, they can't have that conversation. Although, obviously, President Donald Trump has no problems talking about this issue. The problem is he just can't articulate the issue very well. I mean, there's no doubt about that. So they asked him they asked him also in the first debate, what about reopening the economy? And of course, this podcast is about, we call it really an election about masks. And that's where we're going with this, because I think at the end of the day, that's what this election is really about as far as the Democrats who are voting for Joe Biden are concerned. So they asked Joe Biden and Donald Trump, what about reopening the economy? And this was in the first debate. We have that clip, and here it is.
Several of those reopenings. Vice President Biden, you have been much more reluctant than President Trump about reopening the economy and schools. Why, sir?
Because he doesn't have a plan. If I were running, I know what the plan is. You've got to provide these businesses the ability to have the money to be able to reopen with the PPE as well as with the sanitation they need. You have to provide them
Nancy
plastic.
Pelosi.
Well, he's just shush for a minute.
Tell it to Nancy Pelosi. And Schumer,
by the way,
and Chuck.
Nancy Pelosi and Schumer, they have a plan. He won't even meet with them. The Republicans won't meet with him in the Senate. And he sits on his golf course. And literally, think about it.
You probably play more than I do, Joe.
What about this question of reopenings and the fact?
Well, he wants to shut down this country. And I want to keep it open. And we did a great thing by shutting it down. Wait a minute, Joe. Let me shut you down.
So here's the question, ladies and gentlemen. That was from the first debate. Why are we playing that? Because here we are, days before the election. And Joe Biden, when he goes out and he campaigns, it's sparsely attended. There's like no one around him. And he's basically demonstrating to the American people by the fact that he's so afraid of being around people, he's demonstrating to them that as a president, he's going to lead from fear. And he's going to tell you, as President of the United States, we need to shut down the economy, and we need to make sure that you need to be afraid. You need to stay afraid, because Democrats want you to stay afraid. And if we shut down the economy, here's a question for our podcast listeners and for millennials. How many people are going to be dependent more than ever on government if we continue to shut down this economy? I mean,
probably millions.
Probably millions. I think we already have many thousands who already are dependent because their restaurants have been shut down, their bars have been shut down, their gyms have been shut down. In some cases, they've had to close permanently because of government. And really, I would love to have this debate with the Democrat. I would love to have this debate, which is to open the economy. I mean, by open, I mean completely and utterly open the economy, or to not open the economy and to close it. And I think you're going to find that most Democrats want to close the economy, and they don't want to talk about the details, right? Which is, two things can be true at the same time. You can open the economy, and you can also tell people to be careful. And if you are really concerned about your health, don't leave your house.
Make good choices. Like, if you're feeling unwell, stay home. If you decide to go out anyway, just cover your mouth when you cough, wash your hands, keep your distance from everyone.
Are millennials, and I want to know this about all millennials, not just conservative, are millennials, conservative, Democrat, liberal, whatever, libertarian, communist millennials, we know there are plenty of them, are they worried at all about 100% reopening the economy? Are they concerned about that?
I wouldn't say so. Everyone I've talked to, and most of my friends lean towards center right, some on the left, they do have concerns about the long-term impacts. I was talking to one of my best friends who's a Democrat, and she's concerned about businesses closing, schools staying closed.
Schools are the big one, right?
Yes.
But let's face it, most millennials at this point in time don't have children, or if they do, their children are really, really young and maybe just starting pre-K or kindergarten, which is certainly relevant. But that's kind of what I'm hearing too from a lot of millennials who have really young children, as well as millennials who just want to go back to work and realize that as a result of the economy being shut down, the opportunities for millennials are evaporating to be able to have a decent job and a decent career. And that is what scares me, because that's what the Democrat Party is counting on. They are literally using this pandemic not just for fear, but for control, because that's what they have done for generations. I mean, look, every major city in America has an inner city black community, without question. And those inner city black communities have, in many cases, gone nowhere, have not advanced ever since the Democrats have been in charge of those cities. Their schools are bad, the communities are unsafe, there's very little opportunity. That's control. And there's utter dependency on all levels of government. And what better way to do that to all Americans than through a pandemic? Yeah. And that's why they want to shut down the economy. So then
keeping people dependent on stimulus checks, unemployment, other handouts that may come from each state.
Can I tell you something? I actually had a relative, I'm not going to say who it is, but a very close relative who said to me, hey, did you get a stimulus check? And I'm like, did you get a stimulus check? They said, yeah, I'm really hoping I get another stimulus check. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I get it, right? It's free money, but is it really free? I mean, would you rather, and maybe it's just me, but would you rather be working and really advancing in your career, or would you rather be getting that free stimulus check? Because that gets old after a while.
Oh, yeah.
And how long does it really last when you're not working?
Exactly.
What's $1,200 when you're not working? I mean, how long is that going to last, really?
Yeah.
You know? You can't even go, by the way, you can't even go out and enjoy it, right? I mean, when they gave you the first $1,200, we haven't gotten the second one yet because they haven't passed a stimulus for the second one. But for the first $1,200, you couldn't even go out to a bar because the bars were closed. You couldn't even buy a drink, let alone go out to eat, which, is amazing. So
with the economy just going back, President Trump made a really good point in the debate where he said, ask Nancy Pelosi. She keeps shutting down debate or adding unnecessary pork to the bills, like ballot harvesting and ending voter ID. What does that have to do with helping small businesses and paycheck protection?
That's a great point. Because look at all the games they've been playing with the voting and changing the way you're voting to the point where voting doesn't actually end on election day. It continues after election day until you get the result that you want.
Yeah, I'm starting to think more and more that we may not have a winner on election night just because all the mail-in ballots, and some states are going to be contesting them.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, certainly Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, to name at least a few, are going to have great problems. A lot of people say Minnesota, but Minnesota has always been so utterly corrupt on the Democrat side, and Minnesota has always been in the Democrat column, at least always, as in many, many decades. I would love for us to win Minnesota, the Republican Party to win Minnesota, because the citizens of Minnesota are sick of Ilhan Omar, who's, of course, represents Minneapolis, St. Paul area. They're sick of her, and they're sick of her anti-American stuff. So, but anyway, this podcast is about masks. Is this election really about masks? And so we have another clip on this, which is from the first debate, and the question was, well, what about the effectiveness of masks? I mean, right at the heart of this debate. And this, of course, was the first debate, and we're still talking about this today, at least the Democrats are. We have that clip, and here it is.
To increasingly question the effectiveness of masks as a disease preventer. And in fact, recently you have cited the issue of waiters touching their masks and touching plates. Are you questioning
I think
the
masks
efficacy
are okay.
of
You have
masks?
to understand, if you look, I mean, I have a mask right here. I put a mask on, when I think I need it. Tonight, as an example, everybody's had a test, and you've had social distancing and all of the things that you have to. But I
Just
wear
like your
masks
rallies.
when needed. When needed, I wear masks.
Okay, let me ask.
I don't wear masks like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be speaking 200 feet away from it. He shows up with the biggest mask I've ever seen.
Yes, because that is the Biden and Democrat virtue signaling that's been happening this entire pandemic and all of 2020 during the election, which is we wear masks and they don't. In fact, we wear masks when we're outside. We wear masks when we're inside. But of course, you know for a fact that this is just the regular media pool that's taking these pictures, because obviously no one really wants to wear these darn masks 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right?
Probably the second they go into their private offices and shut the door.
The mask comes off, right?
Yeah.
I mean, my favorite is when I'm driving in a car, like on the way here to the podcast. Listen to this, podcast listeners. I know you've seen this too. On the way to the podcast, right? There's this car that's at a stop sign, and I go by it, and it's like these two people in the car, and they're wearing a mask in the car. I'm like, you idiots! You're in the if you live together in the same house, and you find it necessary to be wearing a mask in the car, why have you even left your house to begin with? You're obviously terrified of everything, so go back home. Go cocoon back home. I don't know what has happened to the citizens of this country. We're supposed to believe in rugged individualism, which is, personal responsibility.
Yeah.
And going outside and taking care of your family and working and so forth, using common sense, being a critical thinker and being able to apply those critical thinking skills. But no, that doesn't happen. So that was, of course, Trump and Biden in the first debate, of course, talking about, what about the effectiveness of masks? And that was Trump's response. Well, naturally, there's also the same question to Joe Biden, which is, Joe Biden, what about the effectiveness of masks? And this was also from the first debate. We have that clip, so listen to the contrast, and here it is.
Vice President Biden, go ahead, sir.
Look, the way to open businesses is give them the wherewithal to be able to open. We provided money.
But I was asking you, sir, about masks.
Well, masks make a big difference. His own head of the CDC said if we just wore masks between now, everybody wore masks in social distance between now and January, we'd probably save up to 100,000 lives. It matters.
And they've also said the opposite. They've also said
no serious person said the opposite.
So here we go. Is a homemade cloth mask really in any way, shape, or form effective when you are outside of your home and you go to, let's say, a Walmart or you go to a grocery store, wherever you're going? Is that really effective versus an N95 mask or a surgical mask? And I'm pretty sure that common sense would dictate that it's not. And so, but what the Democrat Party and Joe Biden are saying is that any kind of mask is what you should wear, and that's sufficient. And it's not true. It's not true that, I'm sure it's not true that a cloth mask is effective. Wouldn't you, if you're really concerned, want an N95 mask? Isn't that what you would want?
Yes, but for the longest time, and I understand this completely, they want to save those for healthcare workers, nursing home staff, people who were in high-risk areas.
Exactly, right, yes, but now there's plenty of personal protective equipment, and if really the issue is that many people can't afford the best of the best masks, and they will indeed wear those, and by those many people, I'm talking about the people that are most effective and most affected and most impacted by this pandemic, then there's no doubt that we should provide those masks to those individuals. But I just find it interesting that they're talking at the 100,000 mile level, high level, and it's just about masks, but not about the details. And that's Chris Wallace's fault, because Chris Wallace should have been more detailed, but you can't. You can't talk about it, because no, mask good, no mask bad. It doesn't matter what kind of mask it is. Could have 20 holes in the mask.
Could be mesh.
It could be, right, mesh is allowed because it's still a mask mesh. So Delling-Poll, there's an article that just came out, literally just came out, and it's published in Breitbart because naturally no one else would publish it. It says, why won't top medical journals publish the landmark Danish mask study? And once again, critical thinkers over there at Breitbart actually putting this out because there is a Danish mask study, and no one will allow this mask study to be published. Not just social media, but I mean any newspaper, any. Other than newspapers such as Breitbart. And I just want to read a little bit from this. It says, do masks protect against the Chinese coronavirus and reduce its spread, or are they, as their critics maintain, mere empty gesture politics? A major study, which might finally have answered this question, has been postponed indefinitely after 3 of the world's top 3 medical journals mysteriously declined to publish it. They won't publish it. And so the Danish newspaper Berlingske, hope I said that right, reports the researchers behind a large and unique Danish study on the effect of wearing a mask are having great difficulty in getting their research results published. One of the participating professors in the study admits that the still secret research result could be perceived as controversial. For weeks, the media and researchers around the world have been waiting with increasing impatience for the publication of a large Danish study on the effect, or the lack thereof, of wearing a mask in a public space during the corona pandemic. Now, one of the researchers who has been involved in the study has said that the finished research result has been rejected by at least 3 of the world's leading medical journals. These include The Lancet, the New England Journal of Medicine, and the American Medical Association's journal, JAMA. They all said no, said the chief physician in the research department at North Zealand Hospital, Professor Christian Torp Peterson. However, the professor does not wish to disclose the journal's reasoning. And then one of the study's co-authors, Henrik Ullum, has tweeted that the authors are all very unhappy about the delay of their study. So, look, if masks don't work as well as we think they may, or if some masks work really well and others don't work at all, then why aren't we having that critically important conversation?
It's definitely a conversation worth having. It should be taken into consideration when orders are issued.
Absolutely. And look, this podcast is, of course, about why this election is about masks. And is it really about masks? Apparently it is, according to the Democrat Party and their groupthink voters, because they are groupthink voters, rather than really asking the critically important questions. And here's the thing. One of the reasons I do this podcast, because I just pray that millennials will engage in more critical thinking and use critical thinking skills to constantly question government. We must constantly question government. We must question their motives. We must question their logic. We must question their reasoning. And we must also understand that we ultimately have to rely on our own good judgment and ourselves to survive and to thrive in society. And so many people don't believe that. They just look to government and they believe everything they hear, such as a Joe Biden saying, he won't wear masks, and if he did that, more people would wear masks, and more people would be alive today and will be alive tomorrow if they wear masks. Well, what if that's not true? Or what if there are some masks where that's true, and the vast majority of masks that I see people wearing, which are their homemade ones, don't work at all. And I think that probably, I just want to say this for the record, I will bet you that post-pandemic, post-election, we're going to hear experts say, oh, by the way, you know those homemade masks that you bought online that were made of cloth, or that you bought from your neighbor, it had red, white, and blue, or it had mega or whatever? They don't work. But the N95 masks, yeah, they work. They actually provide a certain level of protection. Not perfect protection, but a certain level of protection. And if that comes out post-pandemic, I believe the Democrat Party and our government as a whole will have really committed a crime against the citizens by not telling them the truth about masks. Just saying. So here we are, fast forward in this election, right? Days before the election, and we're talking about the effectiveness of masks. And Joe Biden, still days before the election in Chester, Pennsylvania, this week, talks about the Trump campaign events. And how does he characterize those Trump campaign events? We have a clip on that. And here it is.
Folks, I have an admission to make. There's so many of you here. I wish I could go to car and meet you all.
I don't like the idea of all this distance, but it's necessary. I appreciate you being safe. What we don't want to do is become super spreaders.
Yeah, so there you go. So go ahead.
Any event where there are a majority of Republicans now super spreader events? Because I've heard that used so many times to describe so many events.
Exactly, because, and why? Because Donald Trump's events are heavily attended. By heavily, I'm talking about 10, 20, 30,000 people, one event after another. Joe Biden's events are not. Now, Joe Biden is saying, well, the reason why his events aren't attended well is because he doesn't want to have super spreader events, when in fact, we all know that if Joe Biden really had a following, if people really engaged and really thought he was this great candidate, he would have 10, 20,000 people as well. He doesn't. So this goes to the heart, what he just said, Joe Biden, that he doesn't want to have super spreader events. In my opinion, this goes to the heart of the 2020 campaign as it relates to the Democrat Party, namely that they don't want Donald Trump to campaign because they know if he campaigns, he wins. If he doesn't campaign, he loses. So they want to use the mask argument to say, you got to wear a mask, otherwise you won't be safe. And then they got to go to the next thing, which is, well, if you do wear a mask and you go to one of these events, it's still going to be a super spreader event, even if you wear masks. And then they're going to say, well, yeah, but some people didn't wear a mask at the Donald Trump events, and therefore that's definitely what makes it a super spreader event, folks. Maybe a lot of those people already had the coronavirus and were tested and therefore have immunities. Maybe some of those people aren't the least bit concerned because they are perfectly healthy and they've read the statistics and realize that they have a 99.9% chance of survival if they do. Maybe others just want to continue going about their lives and living their lives.
They'll just hand sanitize later, wash their hands later.
Yes, and it goes to, and of course Biden's point is well, some of the people at the Trump rallies aren't wearing masks. Look, I'm not going to make a judgment on that one way or the other, whether someone does wear a mask or not, other than to say, I'm not really sure a cloth mask, as I've said 10 times during this podcast, is really going to save them from getting the coronavirus when they go to events like that. But the core of the Democrat Party and Joe Biden's argument is that super spreader events shouldn't be allowed. They should be banned. They should be banned, not riots, by the way. Not riots.
Or protests in the street.
Or protests in the street. They shouldn't be banned. But Donald Trump rallies, they need to be banned because they're dangerous because he won't wear a mask, which is why he got coronavirus. And, Donald Trump's argument has been, of course, all along, his argument has been, you know what? I'm president of the United States. What am I supposed to do? Hide myself in the basement of the White House and do nothing and say nothing and avoid people? And of course, the Democrat Party's argument would be, yeah, that's what we want because we don't want you to talk at all. Because when you do, you rally your base and your base is motivated to actually show up, which is incredible. So we have a Trump response to Biden because this all happened this week. So you heard us start out at the Chris Wallace debate, and we progressed through that Chris Wallace debate where it was still about masks. It was still about, Donald Trump, he should have closed the economy. And then Trump says, well, yeah, Joe Biden, you are going to close the economy. And then Biden's go, no, that's not true. I would just do more. I would do more with PPE. So then we have Biden in Chester, Pennsylvania this week saying, well, Trump events are super spreader events, not mine. And now we have Trump's response to Biden. It's pretty awesome. And here is that clip.
And we had two events. Sleepy Joe was down there, and they said, you got to get out of this basement. So he traveled from Delaware to a little tiny corner of Pennsylvania, like right next to Delaware, and he made a speech. And he said that he doesn't do these kind of rallies because of COVID, No, he doesn't do that because nobody shows up. That's why.
So true. Oh my gosh.
Best comeback.
That's great. That's exactly right. Because Joe Biden's events are Joe gets on a stage and people drive up in a car, and then when Joe talks, people beep the horn. It's like, beep, beep, beep. Way to go, Joe.
Sounds like a traffic jam.
Exactly. Great job, Joe. Yeah. And it's like 10 cars, 10 cars beeping their horns. And then when Joe's finished, he jumps off stage, and you can see his aides, the people helping him, of course, with his election, they're like trying to bolt him out of there so the media can't ask him any questions.
Then they call a lid.
And then, exactly, it's unbelievable. That's what's happening. And Trump's point is, and of course he's not particularly good at articulating it, even though he is really funny. His point at that particular Trump rally this week, in response to Joe Biden calling Trump's events super spreader events, his point is, without actually saying it, we can't stop living our lives. And he did say something that I thought was also very aspirational and unifying at the last debate, which is, and he said that in his closing comments, his closing remarks, he said, you know how we bring people together? Doing well in the economy. When people do well, when they see opportunity and they see that life is getting better and that their economic circumstances are getting better, it brings people together. It really does. Which is why more Hispanics and more African Americans are going to vote for Donald Trump in this election than for any other Republican president in the history of this country, without question.
Oh yeah, his messaging has been like, I want to put you back to work. I want to get you back on your feet. I want your business to be open. I want you to feel economically secure and that you're able to provide for your family.
Exactly. And I just think it's fascinating that in 2020, we have a campaign, we have this very serious pandemic. Of course it's serious, but we have a campaign and it's about, of all things, that guy won't wear a mask, so don't vote for him. That guy's having campaign events, so don't vote for him. So basically what Joe Biden is saying and the Democrats are saying is stop living your lives. Don't live your life. Stop living your life, go home, cocoon, do nothing until we, the Democrat Party, tell you you are allowed to go out. Otherwise, you must obey. So we have a couple of SNL clips, right? Saturday Night Live clips to make fun of all this. And this is important because I got to give SNL, Saturday Night Live, huge kudos.
They've been phenomenal this whole cycle with their debate sketches.
They make fun. And this is what I love about humor, right? I love humor that makes fun of Republicans. I do. And I love humor that makes fun of Democrats. And I like it when they do both. And they do both in the same skit. Or they do two skits back to back that clearly create that kind of balance and go right at the heart of what makes both candidates weak, because it's funny, and go after their weaknesses as well as their strengths. And and SNL, I gotta tell you, we have two clips on this. And if you're listening to the podcast, listen very closely and we'll explain it. But if you're watching, you're gonna love this. So the first clip is the Biden town hall. Of course, Biden and Trump did a town hall, and they were simultaneously broadcast on different networks. So on the Biden town hall, Biden is played by Jim Carrey, who just, I must tell you,
he should win an Emmy or...
He looks like him, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Jim Carrey is transformed into Joe Biden. Yeah. I mean, and no one could do that but Jim Carrey. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Like, he's just been on point. Like him as Biden and Maya Rudolph as Senator Harris, they've just been on point. Probably my favorite impersonations next to Tina Fey as Sarah Palin a few years ago.
Oh my God, Tina Fey as Sarah Palin. I can see Alaska from my house.
Oh yeah, that's probably one of my favorite SNL political sketches.
No, I can see Russia from my house. That's what she said, yeah, because she was from Alaska. She was like, I can see Russia from my house.
Oh yeah. I hope she runs for Senate in 22.
So we have George Stephanopoulos, of course, was the moderator on the Biden debate, the Biden town hall, and that was played by, how do you say this guy? Is it Mikey Day or Mickey Day? I don't even know.
Mickey or
I think it is Mickey Day, and we have Biden played by Jim Carrey, and so we have two clips about this, and we're setting up this first one because you have to watch Biden or at least listen to him, which is Jim Carrey playing him, to really get a full feel for how wonderful he does and how he transforms from this first clip to the second one. And so here is the clip.
Mr. Vice President, how would your response to COVID differ from the horrible one of President Trump, who I hate?
Okay, let's limit how many times you outright say you hate President Trump during your questions.
Aww.
Mr. Vice President, go ahead.
Okay. Now, Nicholas, where the hell are you? Nicholas?
I'm up here.
Huh?
Go ahead.
Hey, Yeah, here's the deal. Unlike the president, I actually have a plan.
Oh, okay, great. What is it?
A plan? It's a detailed proposal for doing or achieving something.
And see, like all good humor, there's truth in the humor, right? So the truth in this particular humor is that all through the pandemic with Joe Biden running for president, including at this late day, days before the election, Biden keeps saying, well, I have a plan.
What's the plan?
And so it's like, dude, what's the plan for the pandemic? And so he says, well, more personal protective equipment, and we also need more testing. And it's like, Joe, there's plenty of personal protective equipment now. And by the way, Joe, there wasn't initially because you exported that industry to China, and now we're starting to make it here in the United States again. And the second thing is, with respect to not just the PPE, but also the testing, well, if you notice, there's no wait if you want to get a test now. So before, you had to get into the queue, and it was like, okay, it might take a couple of days.
And you could only get a test if you had symptoms A, B, and C.
And now you can get tested, period. Now, if you have a procedure that you have to have that requires some sort of hospitalization or even outpatient kind of procedure, you have to get tested in advance. You can get that test just by calling up and showing up. And so there's plenty of testing and there's plenty of PPE. So the funny thing about the SNL Cold Open is they're making fun of something that is true, and that's part of what makes it so hysterically funny, because like, I got a plan. My plan is, it's like, well, what is your plan? Well, a plan is a detail. So we have a second SNL clip, and I have to set this up. So the first clip is, it's a town hall. The second clip is the same town hall with Mickey Day playing George Stephanopoulos and Jim Carrey playing Biden. And they show Biden after he's been at the town hall for a while, and he kind of forgets where he is, and so he's playing Mr. Rogers.
Oh, I think one of Trump's spokespeople actually described Biden's town hall as an episode of Mr. Rogers, so that's probably where they got that from.
So we have, and no one can pull this off better than Jim Carrey. I mean, he's just so phenomenally talented. And what makes this also funny is Jim Carrey is a far lefty, right? And so and to his credit, they're making fun of both candidates. And so they have, first in this, you're going to see in this clip, first it's Jim Carrey who's like transformed Joe Biden into Mr. Rogers because he kind of just forgets and loses his mind of where he is. And then they do a quick tearaway to the Trump town hall, and that's Alec Baldwin. Alec Baldwin is playing, and it's WrestleMania, right? So Trump decides to get involved in WrestleMania with Savannah Guthrie.
No, it's a Trump-Guthrie debate.
It's the Trump-Guthrie debate, right, where you actually have the moderator becoming the debater, and so then they're fighting each other back and forth, so which, of course, so much truth to that. So you have to watch this clip. We've set it up, and here it is.
Let's make the most of this beautiful day.
Joe Biden.
Since we're together,
Thinks he's Mr. Rogers.
might as well say, would you be mine?
Everybody's going to sing with
Would you
him.
be mine? Won't you be my neighbor? What do you say? Will you be my neighbor, George?
What? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm watching the Trump one. They're really going at it.
Now, Savannah is telling him there's another question, but oh no, it was just a distraction. Savannah Guthrie has a folding chair from the audience, and Trump doesn't see it.
That's so, I gotta tell you something, that is so awesome. It's so Donald Trump too, because he just takes on the media and he's in their face, you know, you're fake news, you know, you're a liar, you know, you should go to jail. I mean, it's just so, and he takes on, that's Kate McKinnon playing, from Saturday Night Live, she's playing Savannah Guthrie, and that's of course Alec Baldwin playing Donald Trump, and naturally Jim Carrey playing Mr. Rogers.
Like that sketch from start to finish is just so funny. They've been on point this whole season with their political sketches, like even during the primary debates.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know what I love about this humor in SNL and what they've done is humor is what brings us together, right? one of the great things about humor, and I've always loved this, and everybody who knows me knows this one thing about me, and that is I love making fun of myself. And I think it's fun to watch great comedians make fun of others as well, because great humor always has that sense of truth in it. There's part of truth in it that you really can't talk about openly in society because of all the political correctness, but you can do it with humor, which is one of the reasons why South Park is so popular, because you really can't hold anyone accountable at South Park because
they mock everyone.
Because they're characters, right? They're animated characters, so you can't make fun of. You can't say, "Well, that Cartman needs to be taken off the air."
They don't exist.
You know, exactly, they don't exist, and so they can say things that you normally could never say in real. Even though so much of what they do so much of what they produce over there at South Park has some truth to it, which is what makes it so daggone funny. I mean,
nothing's off limits for them.
And SNL, kudos to you, SNL, for bringing people together through humor. We need more of that in 2020. And also we need more of that moving forward in politics. And that brings us to civil discourse. Civil discourse, by the way, podcast listeners, listen to this. Civil discourse in Utah is different than civil discourse everywhere else in America.
Oh, yeah.
In Utah, instead of having a Republican candidate cut a commercial for himself or herself and attack the Democrat candidate, and then the Democrat candidate cutting a commercial for himself or herself and attacking the Republican candidate, that doesn't happen in Utah. It does happen in the other 49 states, where they just go after each other, and they go after each other's jugular, of course, and try to expose their weakest points. But no, not in Utah. In Utah, the Republican and the Democrat actually cut a commercial together.
Wow.
And I got to tell you something.
It's very on brand for Utah.
Only this would happen in Utah. And it's also kind of cool in some ways. In other ways, it's a throwback to maybe like the 1950s. That's what it feels like. It feels like, the 1950s. What's that show that it's in the 1950s? It's a movie, and the movie is all in black and white, and then eventually turns into color. I don't know. I forgot the name of that movie, but it'll come to me. In any way, that's what this feels like, that they're still in the 19... But I got to say this. Kudos to Utah for having civil discourse. Oh, yeah. But there's a reason they are able to have this civil discourse. There are a number of reasons, actually, which we're going to talk about after you listen to this clip. But podcast listeners, only in Utah, I think that's what we should call this clip. And here it is.
I'm Chris Peterson.
And I'm Spencer Cox.
We are currently in the final days of campaigning against each other to be your next governor.
But today we've come together with a message more important than our differences.
That we will fully support the results of the presidential election.
So Utah can be an example to the nation.
Whether you vote by mail or in person, your vote determines the outcome.
And then we commit to a peaceful transfer of power.
It is the very foundation of our country.
And we ask that you stand with us.
Oh my gosh, guys, it's Utah. Oh my gosh!
They talk about accepting the results of the election. It's like, I don't think Utah's in any danger of flipping.
Exactly.
I'd rate that as a safe red seat. It's the land of Romney.
And that's exactly what makes this so funny, because the reason why this is only in Utah is because the outcome of the gubernatorial election in Utah, because these two guys, Cox and Peterson, are running against each other for governor, the outcome is certain. Right? The Republican's going to win, just like the outcome in Utah of who's going to win the presidential popular vote within Utah is obvious too. It's going to be Republican. But these guys are just like, oh my gosh, we're such good friends. And the Democrat, you can tell it's like a little puppy in this case, because the Republican's got like a little puppy friend who's a Democrat who knows the Democrat is never going to win in Utah.
When watching that commercial, they were standing so far apart from each other, it reminded me of those old "I'm a Mac" and "I'm a PC" commercials.
It's true, right? And that's civil discourse, in Utah. Civil discourse in Utah, where Cox versus Peterson both guys running for governor, only place in the United States of America where a Democrat and Republican shoot a commercial together on the same frame and talk about how much they like each other. But it's like, yeah, we disagree on policy, but we really like each other. And the fact that we really like each other, it's like, guys, how about talking about the policy in your commercial?
Yeah.
Like, what makes you different? Like, what does a Mormon who's a Democrat in Utah believe in that's different than a Mormon who's a Republican in Utah believe in? I don't even know. I mean, you tell me, is it just D versus R, or is there more to that? And they also are super, look, I got to give this to the, they're super hokey too. As I said, it looks like it's right from the 1950s. It's like, I mean, without question. So I want to give you the final thoughts on this Utah thing, and also on this election is about masks. And I can't believe Donald Trump. So look, if Donald Trump loses this election about masks,
We're getting a national mandate probably.
and which the national mandate would mean what? What does that mean?
I don't know. I've heard the term used by the Democratic candidates, and I'm not 100% sure. Are they talking about we have to wear them from the second we leave our house, whenever we're in a public venue?
Outside, in our cars, everywhere you go.
In California, their health department posted that they're encouraging people at restaurants to keep your mask on even when you're seated. Or I don't know if they went so far as to say in between bites.
Yeah. So you pull your mask up and then you chew, and then you pull your mask down when you want to take a bite of your sandwich, and then you put it back up when you chew. Any government that can tell you that you have to do that is a government that must be defeated by the people, because that is absurd. Because the idea, here's the key takeaway for our millennial listeners, for our boomer listeners, for everybody in podcast land out there. Here's the key takeaway. If you live in a rural area, why should you be wearing a mask at all? And likewise, if you live in a place like Manhattan, I can certainly understand it. If you want to wear a mask outside, I can certainly understand that. But it should still be up to you. It should still be up to you. So the idea, and this is the Democrat thing, they want the entire country to be looked at exactly the same. We are a very diverse country with different geography.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Different political views, different climate. I personally see if a national mask mandate's issued, I see all the red states taking it to the Supreme Court and fighting it.
Thank goodness. And thank goodness, and congratulations to Judge
Justice
Amy
Barrett,
Barrett for just being confirmed, of course, by the Senate.
Thank you to Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham.
And Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham for delivering it,
Yes.
Because we now see the importance of the Supreme Court in not making policy, but pushing back on policy that infringes upon individual rights and the Constitution of the United States. And one of those individual rights would be telling the American people, you must wear a mask, as you said, the national mask mandate. You must wear a mask outside at all times. And it's like, no, I don't think I need to wear a mask outside all the time. And oh, by the way, let's go back to the conversation that we had earlier, which is, well, what kind of masks? And show me, and by the way, the whole follow the science thing, show me the science that a cloth mask is actually effective versus an N95 mask, and then show me how effective they are and how often you're able to fend off catching the virus as a result of wearing one mask versus the other versus not wearing a mask at all. Just saying. Final thoughts on this. Melissa Brown.
I just think at the beginning of the pandemic, when it really started to pick up in February or March, I think there was a lot of misleading reports in science just going back and forth on, should we wear a mask? Should we not wear a mask? And I think to an extent that they do help some, like it could keep someone from spreading the disease, it could keep someone from catching the disease, but some governors around the country, particularly in blue states, have gone overboard with their requirements, and they're trying to blanket their states as a one-size-fits-all, and each state in their respective counties are all different. And
so what you're saying is that in the blue states, like in New York, we have a governor of New York that says that you should always wear a mask at all times. But meanwhile, that same idiot in New York, the governor, sent people with coronavirus to recover in nursing homes. So it's like, wait a minute, you're so virtuous that you're telling us to wear a mask, but you're the guy that sent people to nursing homes and literally murdered, and that is the correct word, by the way. It's a strong but correct word, sent people to nursing homes, which resulted in the murder of thousands of people in nursing homes. Yeah, thank you. I don't think I'm going to be listening to the government anytime soon about how to keep myself safe.
And Governor Cuomo, I think, has gone way too far with the edicts, and also his impact on businesses. If I remember correctly, he was telling restaurants that, hey, chicken wings do not count as food of substance to remain open. I remember reading that somewhere, and he was telling people, like, chicken wings don't count as food.
That's right. Just like in Michigan, Governor Whitmer, who said that you can't buy seeds at the hardware store because, that's not essential. You don't need seeds. You don't need to grow your own food, especially during a pandemic, because you might have to grow it at home. No, but you don't need seeds.
Oh, wow.
So, well, that's it for Mark and the Millennials. Thank you for joining Mark and the Millennials. This is Mark Fisher. Thank you to Melissa Brown, our millennial, and welcome. And, of course, our producer, Adam Couture, our assistant producer, Christopher Hopkins. Check us out on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and our website. See you next time.